this section here is where I started my orchard. And actually I started with 2 trees and expanded over 8 years. We have, like you see, this is conventional orchard. Trees spaced about 5 feet apart. I got 37 trees, 37 apple trees and 4 pear trees in this area here. And then a few years ago I discovered the 45 oblique cordon. This really, to me, is the way to go. Each row I have 6 trees. They're planted, these are planted about 3 feet apart, and you can see the production that I get. This year is Cox Orange, and maybe I have about 20 or 30 apples still standing on it. If you compare this to one of the other trees, conventional trees, you will see that they're much bigger, wider area, and hard to plant, hard to maintain control. The advantage of this, in my opinion, is the height. You do not need a ladder to maintain the tree, and the pruning, because you do not do winter pruning on these. It's all summer pruning. If you go to the king of 45 cordon, which is, in my opinion, Mr. Bob Duncan, you will see, I guess, how these things are really done. But in the summertime, mid-July, I prune them off. Don't mind this, the deer helped me with the pruning on the bottom part here. But in the summertime, I prune them off, and you will see that I've already started to get new growth on them. And again in September, mid-September, after I've finished harvesting, I'm going to prune back again, because the idea is to get as much fruiting spots as possible close to the tree trunk, so you can get all the fruits that you possibly like. I tend to cheat a bit and not follow the conventional way. For instance, notice how long this stem is, this branch. You know, just like an ordinary tree. But because I have so much space on the side here, I can afford to do that. You know, and so whereas in between the rows here, you will see that I keep the stems much tighter to the tree. I keep them much tighter to the tree as compared to being branched out all the way there. I average about 30 fruits per tree. Yeah, and so 18 times 30 is what, 480, so I get 500 fruits. So I'll say from this row of 18 trees, I get about 500 apples. Compared to the others that's all spread out, where I have 37 trees, I probably get about the same amount of apples from those 37 trees.
Are all of these on dwarf rootstocks?
All these are dwarf rootstocks. They're all M9s rootstock.
Did you graft them?
And I grafted, yeah, I grafted all these. Some in the first bed here, I had Gary's help. Gary Brust is the man that taught me how to graft. So most of the grafting on this side is Gary's. Some of the trees I have on that side were trees that I purchased also from Bob Duncan, but it's all M9 trees. And my goal is to try to keep the trees maximum 8 feet, so that I don't have to get on a ladder and climb to do what you call it, to prune, you know. The other thing the only problem I have with the trees are the codling moth and insects. Because I don't spray, I try to use the brushed codling trap, moth trap, which is these little cans here, these little milk containers, as you see we have here, in which we put a mixture of molasses and soup and what else? What do you call the thing? I can't remember now. But you make a mixture here and you put it there, and it attracts the moth, so that hopefully we trap enough so that they don't get in and eat the apple core and cause us to lose some of our fruit.
Now the moth occurs in the blossoming period where you have to worry about it, or later?
Well, I think they come in the early spring or so, and I really don't know the science behind it. I think it's more than the moth, because as far as I understand, the codling moth is supposed to come up through the bottom here and get in and eat the core of the fruit, and then it drops. But I see stuff, holes all over. So all I can say is insects love apples, and they find their way in, and they deprive me of a lot of fruit. One of my most productive trees is this tree here, Priam. The apple is Priam, and I think I've probably lost about, I'll say 20% of the apples that I had in this tree already. Oops, I just lost another one.
To the codling moth?
To the codling moth, too, you know. But as you can see, I wouldn't count them, but...
So couldn't you net, because it's in a confined area, couldn't you net them?
No. No, it's going to cost me more to net them than, I'll probably net them more from the deer than I would from the moth. And the reason why I'm saying that is because although the fruit is damaged by the moth, I still use it. You see, I'll just cut this off and I'll dry them. The moth, there's a hole in it here. I mean, something went in there. And you see, this is how the inside of the fruit looks. Because what it has done is it has eaten out the core of the apple. It's laid its eggs inside there, I guess, and sometimes you see a worm, and when the fruit falls on the ground, the worm just comes out and gets into the ground, I guess, and wait until springtime and come up again. But this doesn't bother me none. I eat it anyhow.
So it tastes good.
And it tastes good, you know.
So what do you do with most of the apples?
I dry them. I make juice. At the end of the year, October, I guess, I make my applesauce and what else my wife makes. She uses the crab apple and does something with it. But most of my apples I dry and juice and eat. I store them so I have apples until end of March.
What temperature do you store them at?
Well, whatever the garage is, what I
really?
store. But I got an idea from an old neighbor of mine, and so I'm going to try it this year. He stored his apples, and I say stored because he's no longer a gardener, I guess. He stored his apples in the freezer, and what he told me to do is you put them in an old freezer in the garage, and you keep a candle in the freezer, and each time you remove stuff from the freezer, you light the candle and close the door, and this way the candle draws all the oxygen out, and all that's left is whatever gas is produced by the apple, and that should keep the apples at better, keep them in a longer, make them last longer, and not become mushy and old as they do.
So the freezer's turned off, of course.
The freezer is turned off, but the freezer is insulated, so the temperature does not vary as my garage does. Because although it's sheltered outside, it's sheltered from the elements, you still have temperature rise and fall and variance in temperatures, especially out here on the coast. So I'll try it this year and I'll let you know how it works. I have 77 apple trees, 64 varieties.
Wow.
So
In these two plots?
from there to over here, 64 varieties. The one I have the most of is the Spartan. I have 5 Spartans, 3 Beldis, 2 Honeycrisp, 3 Beldi Bush Scoop, 3 Gravestine. See, this is what I inherited the property with. As you can see the size of this apple tree here, this is a standard size apple tree, and you can count the fruits on it. And I probably got about a dozen apples on this size tree. Now, and look at how much space it's taken up. This is a good 10 feet, 10, 12 feet across. So I'll say in this same area here, when this tree, if I were to take this tree out, I can put down maybe 10 rows.
Then you've got the nightmare of picking them though too.
I can put 60 trees down here. But you see that this is a good example of where the cordon, 45 cordon, fits into a small space compared to having to plant yourself a big apple tree. Other experiments we're trying in this small area, of course, is we're trying sweet potatoes for the first time. As you know, with raspberries, what we do is we take out the old cane. You wouldn't be getting any cane from the ones that's produced already.
What time of year do you do that, Patrick?
When I got time, so since I'm talking to you guys here, just do it at the same time, otherwise. So whatever produced here, so all this new cane will provide us with fruit will give us fruit next year. In addition to the 45 cordon, I'm trying a 90-degree cordon here, straight up. This is something that I used to have grapes planted here, but of course I didn't get any grapes, so I took them out. I don't use fertilizers. I use, well, let me show you my fertilizer. And I start off this with newspapers and food cuttings and a few wriggly worms. And I get I can use the soil, or I can get my what do you call this here? My worm tea. This is the worm piss.
Worm tea.
Yes, that I make my fertilizer with. This is what I make my my fertilizer from. This is what I use to fertilize my my stuff. What I have to do when later on is I have to move this all aside start feeding one side of the box, all the worms will move over, and then I'll get the fertilizer here, and I'll mix that in with my soil, my worm
Excellent.
cuttings, and that's going to be my fertilizer. The worm tea I mix and I put with my plants during right here is the pepper house with all the peppers. Different. Again, all grown in pots, in containers. And I'm in suspense too. Look at this beauty.
Very nice. Whoa.
Like Gary has told me the name of this many times.
That's a fully ripe Grego.
Rego or something like that.
Yep.
I call it brush red.
Sure. Whatever works. Very tasty too.
So this is my first fruit of harvest from the pepper house. You guys must come around more often, man. See the performing for you. Corn is so bloody tall that you gotta stake it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Candy cane?
Candy cane it's called. It's
Sure.
supposed to give you twin cobs. Supposed to give you 2 cobs. It's a sweet corn. I figure carrots go with beets, so I put a row of carrot, a row of beets, a row of carrot, a row of beets. In the onion world, in real life, I probably would have put this in the fair. I call this a decent sized onion, but I think this year it's a little too small, I think. So in the onion world, this is
What's the variety, Tucker?
this is Kelsey.
No,
They're all Kelseys.
What variety of strawberries are they growing there?
This is everbearing.
And the robins don't bother that one?
Well, the reason why I like this is because the robins don't bother it because they hide. They do not give you the color that the outside ones, you see the outside give you a nice red color because of course they're exposed to the sun. They get the sunlight. Whereas inside, you know, they might give you more kind of pinkish color, whitish color because they're not getting the sun that they do. But I'm waiting for the okay from my wife so I can harvest them so she could make some jam or something.
So they're ripe that color?
Yeah, they're ripe.
Really?
They're ripe. It's a strawberry. You know, I was strawberry. They're ripe. You know, if I look.
Do you find the fact that they hide actually prevents the birds from getting to them sometimes?
Prevents the birds from getting to them.
That's brilliant.
And even when it's tall like this, the squirrels don't get in because you know they tend to stay clear, just go along the edges. This is all finished composting, and it's just sitting here until I'm ready to start working the other compost again. So from here, this is going to go over into that box there, and that's it. This is asparagus. This is what asparagus looks like when you let them grow. So come again in the fall, I'll cut these down, cut these all down, and then when they start back in the spring, we get the tips and we harvest some, and then we leave others to just grow and get to size again. This was the garlic, it's all done. It's the first thing to go. We harvest in July. Had an okay crop. It's the size wasn't as big as in previous years because this was planted on the north side of the house, so we don't get the sunlight the early season sunlight that you get in the, had it been planted on the other sides, the south or the east or the west side. You know, it takes a bit longer for the sun to get up there and shine. And good old blueberries again. But very essential part of my diet. Especially when you see how much we're pulling the blueberries in the fall, in the off season. So that's it. The gardening.